Okay, let's take a look at some ellipses and hyperbolas, but now we're going to look at what happens when we want to translate them. So we're going to move them in different directions. They're not always going to be at 0, 0. So here are your formulas for ellipses. Very similar to what you did before in 9-4. The only difference here is that our center is HK. So we're going to have a couple of binomials possibly up here on the numerator. And guys, I'm just going to have you do two things with these. We're just going to find the center, and then we're going to go back and we're going to go ahead and find our foci. So our center is HK. So guys, in the formula, it's minus H minus K, okay, minus H minus K. So we're going to take the opposite of what those are, and then we're going to use the same formula we did before to find our C, which is C squared equals A squared minus B squared. If you notice here, the H is always with your X, okay, and the K is always with your Y. That's something you'll need to know. And then really your C, it's going to depend on which one of these is bigger. If your A squared's always bigger, and you're always and that really is if your X is bigger, this A squared's bigger, you're going to take that C and you're going to add it to and subtract it to the X coordinate. If your Y squared is bigger, that A squared's bigger, then you're going to take that C and you're going to add and subtract it to your Y coordinate. So let's take a look at, let's take a look first here at ellipses, or hyperbola, excuse me, because they're the same here, guys. Hyperbolas, we got the same thing, same formula. You now have an H and a K, H and a K. Notice once again, the H is always with the X. Notice the K is always with the Y. And for this one, it depends on which is the positive variable. So in this case, your X is your positive variable. Notice your Y is negative here. So you're going to add and subtract the C to your X coordinate of your center. And then notice here, your Y is positive. So you're going to add and subtract the C to the Y coordinate of your center. That will give you your foci. So this stuff you really don't have to memorize. It's really just how to find your C are the only things you really need to know. All the rest of it should come pretty naturally. So let's take a look at a couple of fairly simple problems here. The first one, let's go ahead and look at this and look at what's the center, what's the foci for both of these. This one, guys, by the way, I know that this is an ellipse because it's a positive, and my center is, well, it's the opposite of what's with my X, which is positive 3, and it's the opposite of what's with my Y, which is negative 2. So there's your center. So the next thing I need to do is find my foci. So I've got to find my C. So for an ellipse, I always remember it's the opposite of the formula. So C squared equals A squared minus B squared. My A squared always has to be larger. So in this case, it's 49. Okay, that's the larger one. If not, I'd get a negative, and that wouldn't work very well. Minus 25. Okay, that's my C squared, so I get C squared equals, that's 24. We're going to take the square root of that, and then we'll go ahead and simplify that. So that's square root of 4 times square root of 6. So we get C is equal to square root of 4 is 2, so that's 2 square root of 6. Now, the question is, what do I do with that 2 square root of 6? I'm going to add it to either my 3 or my negative 2. Which one is it? Well, in this case, it's going to be the negative 2, the Y coordinate, because notice the Y has the larger number on the denominator. So your foci here are going to be 3, comma, -2 plus 2 square root of 6. Those are unlike terms. You can't add them. And then your other foci are going to be 3, comma, -2 minus 2 square root of 6. And that's it. There's your center and there's your foci. That's all we want to do with these. Let's look at the next one. The next one is an ellipse. I know that because it's minus. The center is the opposite of what's with your x. So in this case, it's -5. And the opposite of what's with your y, which is -1. A lot of times they just go by the order. Oh, well, that's your x, that's your y. No, you got to go what's with that variable, what's with your x and what's with your y. And the next thing we need to do is find our foci. So for this one, it's c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And this one doesn't matter. It's really doesn't because we're adding them. So 16 plus 1 is 17. We take the square root. I would simplify that if I can, but I really can't, guys. So it's just square root of 17. So do I add that to my x or do I add it to my y? Well, for a hyperbola here, I hope it said hyperbola, it's whatever is the positive variable. In this case, it's the y again, so I'm going to add it to the y coordinate. So -5, comma, -1 plus square root of 17. Okay, kind of weird looking foci. And -5, comma, -1 minus square root of 17. Okay, so there's how we take a ellipse. Okay, let me remind this in case I mess this up. This was our ellipse. Okay, and then this one is my hyperbola. Let's look at two more here. They're a little bit more difficult. They're more difficult because they're in this form. They're not in standard form. So here's something that's a little bit different. Okay, so here's what we have to do with these. First of all, we're going to have to separate the x's, is what I like to do. So we're going to separate the x's. And then I'm going to separate that from my y's. Okay, so my y's here, it's a plus 9y squared. I'm going to leave a little bit of room here, and there's a reason for that. Minus 18y. Those are the y's, and then you're going to say, what do I do with that constant? Well, we're going to complete the square here because notice these are all perfect square binomials, guys. So we want to complete the square with these. So we're going to have to take both of those x's and y's, and we're going to have to complete the squares. So to do that, I've got to get this constant. Not a real great color here. And we're going to have to move that to the other side. So now I'm going to take both of these guys, and I'm going to complete the square. So for this one, I think, guys, I just can do this. So it's x plus 1, take half of that squared. And then what do I have to add here? You square that, that's a plus 1. So over here I got to do a plus 1. What do I have to do for the y's here to complete the square? Well, for this one, the first thing I have to do is factor out a 9. It's actually a positive 9. So I'm going to get y squared, then minus 2y. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and complete this square here. Now that I have this with no number in front, that's going to be a y minus 1. And so that's going to be a plus 1. But over here, guys, that's going to be a plus 9. If you remember, you got to do distributive property here. So let's clean this up a little bit, and I'm going to do this below where I left for the answers. Just to kind of see what we have here right now. We have x plus 1, quantity squared, plus 9, parentheses, y minus 1, quantity squared, Okay, notice this 9 just drops down here with this. Equals, well, let's see, -1 plus 1 is 0, and then I just left with a 9. Now, to get this in standard form, we got to have a 1, got to have it equal to 1, so we're going to divide everything by 9. So now this is going to look like this: x plus 1 quantity squared over 9 plus, let's see, 9 over 9 simplifies to just be 1 and 1. So y minus 1 quantity squared over 1 equals 1. Now we have this. This is an ellipse again. Okay, this is an ellipse. I know that because it's positive. We are adding those. So let's pick off the center here. Opposite of what's with your x, opposite of what's with your y. So it'd be -1, 1. Let's find my c. So in this case, c squared equals a squared 9 minus b squared. A squared is always larger, so c squared equals 8. We're going to take the square root. And square root of 8 would be square root of 4 times square root of 2. So we get 2 square root of 2 here. So there is your c. And then, do I add it to my x-coordinate or the y-coordinate of my center? Well, in this case, it's going to be the x, because for an ellipse, it's which one's larger. The larger number's underneath the x, so that's what we're going to add and subtract it to, the x-coordinate of my center. So it's going to be -1 plus 2 square root of 2, comma 1, and -1, comma minus 2 square root of 2. Comma 1. Kind of ugly looking foci, but that's what they are. Okay, let's do this next one here. And I'm going to do this off to the side here, guys, because I don't have much room. I'm going to separate the x's and y's here, but I'm going to do something a little different. Because this x is negative, I'm going to put it second. And then, gosh, guys, I don't have any other x's. Let's do the y's here. Okay, the y's are 4y squared, and then minus 8y. And then this constant, I'm going to go ahead and add it to the other side like I normally would when I am completing the square. So we get equals 32. So now let's take the x's and y's and let's complete the square. So for the y's, we're going to factor out the 4. Let's see, this one would be y minus 1. Boy, I've got that quite a bit here. And that 4 still stays out here. And then to complete that square, I got to do plus 1 here. I got to square that. And then I have to go ahead and multiply that. So it's going to be a plus 4 over here. And this one's kind of nice because, guys, the x already is a perfect square. Since I don't have another x in here, it's already x squared. I don't have to do anything to that. So it's just going to be minus 9x squared equals, and then 32 plus 4 is 36. Now, to get this to be in standard form, we're going to get this to be a 1. So we're going to divide everything by 36. So 4 goes into 36, what, 9 times? So this is y minus 1, quantity squared, over 9, equals, let me see, 9 goes into 36 4 times. So it'd be, oops, this is not supposed to be equals. This is supposed to be negative. Oh, let's see if I can erase that. There we go. So this is just x squared over 4, and then 36 divided by 36 is 1. Okay, guys, so there's my standard form. Let's go ahead and take my center. Remember, it's the opposite of what's with your x. Well, there's nothing with my x. That's a 0. The opposite of what's with my y, it's a 1. Then to find my foci, I have to find my c. So c squared equals, in this case, once again, you're adding this. Not once again, but you're adding this for in a hyperbola, which is what this is. Oops. I'm going to do a capital R or capital H. Hyperbola. We knew that because one of yours is negative. So 9 plus 4, oh boy, that's 13. So square root that. So once again, kind of an ugly one here, but just square root of 13 is all you can simplify there. Now the question is, do I add it to my x or add it to my y's? Well, for a hyperbola, it's always the positive one. The positive variable gets added to. So in this case, it's the 1. So it's 1 plus square root of 13. And then 1 minus square root of 13. And there's your foci, along with doing a little bit of just getting these in standard form here, which is going to be a little bit different. Okay? You got to separate your x's and y's. You got to complete the square. And then you have to get it equal to 1. And that's something we're going to do a little bit more of as we go here. Okay, so you got a worksheet that has these on. I will make sure this is posted on Canvas also right along with this video.